Good evening, my name is Tom. I'm from the North End. This is called Intervention. It was 10 o'clock on a winter's night. The missus was asleep and the Bruins were in town, just around the corner. So I didn't even budge from the couch when I heard the drunken screams 4 floors below me in the streets of Boston's North End. I chalked it up to a close-scoring game. The beer concessions had been flowing late into the third period, and now people were staggering up the hill to their illegally parked cars. When I heard the pounding of metal, I ran to the window, and I looked down, and I saw some out-of-town 20-somethings from the burbs who were looking for a little late-night fun before they took off. Without thinking, something snapped up in my medulla oblongata. I didn't dial 911. I ran down onto the sidewalk and closed the door behind me, and instinctively I said, "Am I locked out? Do I have the keys?" Now, you would think that with gray, thinning hair and a paunch at the equator, that I had diplomatic immunity, that I was harmless. This type of rationalization is called magical thinking by psychiatrists. There they were, five or six jackals who were startled in a blood meal looking at a freshly killed gazelle, and they were standing over a street sign of a war memorial, a marker to a North End kid who in World War II never came home. And it conferred on our humble little intersection the title of Silvio E. Giella Square, and it's on the Freedom Trail. You can see it. I approached the beast. "Now, guys, put that sign down and just leave. This is our neighborhood. That's somebody who gave his life for your country." Now, this was greeted with taunts and all kinds of expletives, and I will leave out the 4-letter expletives because we would never get to the end of this story. But I will tell you their standby 3-letter F word. "What do you want, you old fag?" Now, you would think that my heart would be pounding and my systolic rate would be up and all kinds of things rushing through my brain, but they weren't. I was puzzled. What is the connection between vandalism and homophobia, I wondered. "We don't want any trouble. Please put that down. Just go." They were snarling. They were menacing. They were screaming. At this point, I knew that we would be going into probably sudden death. Excuse me, at this time, we were into overtime. I walked around the side of the van, and I took out a pen, and very slowly, I started writing their license numbers on the palm of my hand that was sweaty and smudged. Now I was surrounded. I could smell the beer on their breath, and one of them grabbed the pen from my hand, the same kind of pen, very sharp point, held it 6 inches from my throat, and that is when I started to realize that we may be going into sudden death over time. I pictured blood spurting, a puncture wound, and then for some reason I thought of Sister Pascalina in our 2nd grade, who told us when we were near death to say a perfect act of contrition. "Oh my God, I am heartily sorry for having offended thee, and I detest all my sins because I dread. And what am I doing here? How am I going to get out of here?" I was surrounded. I looked down. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a red post. I was corralled, but I was up against it, and very slowly I turned and pulled the lever on the firebox, and there was a whirring sound that told me that the signal was going to the dispatch. They were astounded. I was positively jaunty, cheerful, because the entire opposing team was about to be sent to the penalty box. That is, if I could stay alive and on my feet. Gentlemen, you have 2 minutes before the cruiser and the fire truck arrive. I suggest you leave now. They piled into the van, raced down the street, and I heard the expletives wafting out their windows. Okay, wafting out their windows. I stayed in the middle of the street, and I waited for the firemen to arrive. And a bunch of world-weary guys jumped off of a hook and ladder. They looked at me, and I got to tell my story about why I pulled a false alarm and how I thought I was almost going to die. They shrugged. They got back onto the hook and ladder, and they went off into the night, and there I was standing in the middle of the street without a coat on a winter night, but now my heart was pounding. Thank you.